keep your issues to yourself. It's time to grow up, girls. Like fast. Like.
Kelsey Plum thought she was making a statement until Colin Cowherd stepped in and put her all the way in check after the WNBA's All-Star protest, where players wore shirts demanding higher pay. Plum took it a step further, calling out Caitlin Clark's entire camp for skipping the team meeting. Big mistake, because Colin didn't just respond, he unloaded.
The t-shirt, just United Front, was determined this morning that we had a meeting for, and not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
He called out the pettiness, exposed the jealousy, and reminded everyone exactly who's responsible for the WNBA's sudden surge in money, ratings, and relevance. Caitlin Clark. What Cowherd said was bold, brutally honest, and long overdue, and his comparison between Clark and Michael Jordan. It sent shockwaves through the league. So what exactly did Cowherd say? And why are some WNBA stars biting the hand that feeds them? Let's break it down. Before Caitlin Clark came along, the WNBA wasn't just overlooked, it was flatlining.
But why do you take a shot at the Golden Goose, Caitlin Clark? You guys were flying before she arrived on one of those airlines that made you pay for a cup of water.
The league was bleeding money. Most teams operated at a loss. Players were making a fraction of what their male counterparts earned, just 9% of league revenue, compared to the NBA's near 50%. For many WNBA stars, this wasn't a dream job. It was a side hustle with a full-time schedule. Travel. Let's talk about that. Until this season, players were flying commercial, and not just any commercial flights. We're talking bare bones, budget airlines, where you had to pay for water, squeeze into middle seats, and hope your bag made it to the next city. One player even said it felt like being treated less than amateur. Merchandise was almost non-existent. Fans couldn't find jerseys, even if they wanted to buy one. TV ratings were stagnant. Games aired on channels most people didn't even know existed. Media coverage was a whisper. And in the locker rooms, quiet frustration.
I don't have a problem with the WNBA players asking for a raise. The WNBA is on a hot streak. I don't care about the previous 24, 25 years. As an investment, it's starting to pay off. And so the
players wanted more respect, more visibility, more money. They were putting in the work, but the audience just wasn't there. It wasn't about talent. The WNBA has always had hoopers, but what it lacked was attention, viewership, buzz. That one player who could flip the entire league on its head and pull everyone up with her. That player didn't exist. Until now. Because when Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, the league didn't just get a promising rookie. They got a cultural event, a walking ratings spike, a brand, a lightning rod. She didn't just bring eyeballs, she brought value. And it didn't take long for that to change everything. So what exactly did Caitlin Clark bring to the table that turned this entire league on its head? Let's talk numbers. Caitlin Clark didn't just arrive, she detonated. From the moment she stepped into the league, the numbers flipped like a light switch. Attendance, up over 40% across the WNBA. Indiana Fever games, which used to draw sparse crowds in oversized arenas, are now selling out arenas nationwide.
I don't mind the t-shirts. I think you have leverage. I think you deserve more than 9%. But it's just misstep after misstep.
There's a waiting list for season tickets. Let that sink in. A waiting list for a team that ranked near the bottom of the standings just 1 year ago. Merchandise, off the charts. Clark's jersey became the second best-selling basketball jersey in the country, outpacing NBA superstars like Jason Tatum, Damian Lillard, and even LeBron James at one point. That's not just WNBA history. That's sports history. TV ratings? Astronomical. Her debut game brought in over 2.1 million viewers, a WNBA record. Viewership on ESPN platforms jumped 170% year over year. Networks that once treated WNBA games like filler content are now fighting for airtime when Clark's playing.
I think they deserve a big raise, maybe not 50% of revenues, because NBA stars, there's a lot of them, and they move the needle. The WNBA stars, Well, there's one that moves the needle. And here's the other thing to remember. Caitlin Clark's already rich. She made $11 million this year alone in endorsements.
Sponsorships. Corporate America took notice. Brands are lining up to attach their name to her. She's already pulled in over $11 million in endorsements alone, with Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm leading the charge. And she didn't just bring sponsors to herself. She brought them to the league. Suddenly, everyone's winning. Veteran players are getting more attention, more endorsement deals, and finally, talks of a long overdue pay raise. Fans are showing up. Media coverage is at an all-time high. The WNBA, after decades of struggling for relevance, is finally turning into a business. And it all points back to one name, Caitlin Clark. But instead of rallying around the rookie who sparked the surge, some of her fellow players decided to make things personal. It started with a protest, but one player turned it into something else entirely by calling out Clark's camp by name. And that's when Colin Cowherd stepped in. Because this wasn't just about a t-shirt anymore. It was about jealousy. And Cowherd wasn't having it. At first, it looked like a unified stand. During All-Star Week, WNBA players showed up wearing black shirts with bold white letters. Pay us what you owe us. It was a clear message to league executives, and honestly, nobody blamed them. After decades of underpayment, the players had finally gained leverage. Attendance was up, viewership was booming, and revenue was flowing in. But the moment that protest turned into a personal call-out, the tone shifted. That's when Kelsey Plum, a two-time All-Star and championship winner, took the mic and decided to name drop. During a press appearance, she made sure to point out that, quote, 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that meeting.
I know you wanted your song to be the first one they played. You wanted to make up the set.
In other words, Caitlin Clark's camp didn't show up. According to Plum, while everyone else was working behind the scenes to demand better pay, Clark and her team were nowhere to be found. It wasn't just a subtle dig, it was a direct shot. One aimed at the only player who's responsible for the surge that made that entire protest even possible. What Plum said might have been framed as honest, but it wasn't just honesty, it was strategy. And it hit hard, especially coming from someone who's been one of the faces of the league for years. But here's the twist. Plum's claim wasn't even entirely accurate. League insiders later revealed that representatives from Clark's camp had been involved in earlier discussions, just not that specific meeting. So why frame it that way? Because when you're standing in the glow of someone else's spotlight, it's easy to throw shade. And that's exactly what Plum did. But she wasn't ready for the blowback, because less than 24 hours later, Colin Cowherd fired back. And he didn't pull punches. He didn't just defend Clark. He took apart the entire mindset that's been festering in the locker room for months.
This is the player that got you off the airline that was bright yellow. Right? She got you an upgrade to a better hotel as a band member.
And when you hear what he said, you'll understand why this moment may have changed the WNBA forever. Colin Cowherd didn't hesitate. He didn't sugarcoat. He unloaded. After Kelsey Plum's public jab at Caitlin Clark, Cowherd took to his mic and went full throttle. Not just defending Clark, but calling out the quiet jealousy that's been bubbling underneath the surface of the WNBA. And he did it with one unforgettable metaphor. You went from a Motel 6 in a sketchy part of town to a Four Seasons in the shopping district, and you're still complaining? That line exploded online. He wasn't just criticizing Plum. He was speaking directly to every veteran player who's benefited from Clark's arrival but refuses to acknowledge her impact. Cowherd reminded them that before Caitlin Clark, WNBA players were grinding through empty gyms, riding budget airlines, getting paid less than assistant coaches at mid-tier colleges. Now, they're flying private, enjoying national media attention, selling out arenas, and seeing a real shot at financial growth.
Iowa girl, Indiana girl. Well, who knows, and I've said this for years, when the wave hits, ride it. You don't know what it looks like.
And the player who made that possible? The one who transformed the league into an actual product people wanted to watch. Caitlin Clark. Cowherd called her the golden goose. The one player who made the league profitable almost overnight. And then he asked the question that no one else in sports media had the guts to say out loud. Why are WNBA players biting the hand that feeds them? He didn't stop there. He broke down Clark's impact with precision, mentioning the 500% plus rise in merchandise sales, the record-breaking TV numbers, the sold-out road games, and the endorsements flooding in. Then he hit the nerve. You added a band member, and suddenly you're playing at the Ritz. Keep your issues to yourself. That stung, and it needed to, because while fans, media, and sponsors have embraced Clark, some WNBA players have been slower to accept what's happening. And Cowherd made it clear, whether they like it or not, Clark is the reason the league is finally winning. But that jab from Plum wasn't the only sign of resentment, because when the All-Star rosters were announced, something even pettier was revealed. And Cowherd had a lot more to say about that too. If you want to see how deep the resentment toward Caitlin Clark really goes, you don't need a podcast. You just need to look at the All-Star voting. Fans voted Clark the #1 guard in the entire league. Coaches, they were respectful. But the players? They ranked her ninth among guards. That means players who benefit directly from the attention and money Clark brings. The same players flying private and enjoying sellouts voted her behind her own teammates, behind players with fewer points, fewer assists, fewer minutes, and way less impact. And this wasn't just close voting. The gap between the fan vote and the player vote was massive. Let's be real. It had nothing to do with performance. Caitlin Clark was breaking records, dropping double-doubles, and leading rookies in nearly every major offensive category. Her presence alone was filling arenas and doubling TV ratings. This wasn't about basketball. It was about ego. Cowherd called it out with surgical precision. He said what everyone else was hinting at. This isn't about merit. It's about pride. It's about veterans who don't like what the wave looks like. And honestly, he's not wrong. For years, players in the WNBA said they were underappreciated, that the media didn't care. That sexism kept people from watching. Then Caitlin Clark shows up. The world tunes in. The buzz is real. The business explodes. And now, they're mad that she is the reason for the shift. But as Cowherd said, you don't get to beg for attention, then pout about where it comes from. This wasn't just a snub. It was a statement from inside the locker room. We don't want her to be the face of this league. And that's exactly why the tension isn't just showing up on ballots. It's showing up on the court, too. In the elbows, in the body checks, in the way players are guarding Clark like they've got a score to settle. What's happening during these games? It's starting to look a lot like history repeating itself, with a whole new target. The jealousy didn't just show up in All-Star voting. It's been leaking onto the court all season. Caitlin Clark has taken more hard fouls, more elbows, and more borderline flagrant hits than any other rookie in recent memory. And it's not subtle anymore. It's intentional. You don't have to be an expert to see it. Players are bodying her up 40 feet from the basket. They're closing out like it's Game 7 of the finals. She gets hacked, shoved, and blindsided while refs just let the game play on. Even NBA players are starting to speak out saying, hey, if this was happening to anyone else, we'd be talking about suspensions. Cowherd took it a step further. He called it the WNBA's version of the Jordan rules. If you're too young to remember, here's the deal. In the late 80s, the Detroit Pistons created a defensive scheme called the Jordan rules. The goal? Stop Michael Jordan by beating him down physically. Hard fouls, constant contact, intimidation tactics. They couldn't stop his skill, so they tried to break his body. Sound familiar? That's exactly what Clark is facing. Not because she's dirty, not because she's mouthy, but because she's better than they expected, and she's doing it fast. She's hitting logo threes. She's creating space where there is none. She's embarrassing veterans who've never been embarrassed before. And the response from some of those players? Hit her. Hard. Cowherd called out the league, too, saying they need to protect their investment. Because right now, they've got a generational star who's bringing in more money than anyone, and the officials don't seem to know what to do with her. This is the arc of a superstar, Cowherd said. It starts with hazing, then comes physicality, then flagrance, then protection. And it's already started. The Indiana Fever made a move no one talked about enough. They brought in Sophie Cunningham, known league-wide as a physical presence, a tough enforcer. Why? To do what the refs won't, protect Clark. Just like the Bulls brought in Charles Oakley to protect MJ. The Fever are preparing for what's coming. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just surviving the pressure, she's thriving under it. And all of this drama leads to the next big question. How much is this worth? And who should be getting paid? Here's the irony. The same players throwing elbows and shade are also demanding more money. And guess what? They're right to ask. For decades, WNBA players have been underpaid, underpromoted, and underappreciated. Right now, they receive just 9% of league revenue. In the NBA, that number is nearly 50%. So when players say, "Pay us what we're worth," they're not wrong. But here's the catch, and it's one Cowherd didn't let slide. You finally get the financial surge you've been begging for, and then you ice out the person who brought it in the front door. That's the contradiction no one wants to admit. Because the truth is, the WNBA is finally entering its money era. Franchise values are rising. Expansion is coming. 5 new teams on the table in the next few years. The league just signed a new $2.2 billion media rights deal that kicks in soon. And who do you think made that level of investment even possible? Yeah, Clark. Her star power didn't just help the league grow. It helped prove it's finally marketable. Now, owners have something they've never had before. Leverage in future TV negotiations, packed arenas to sell to sponsors, and real merch numbers to point to. So when players demand a raise, executives are listening, but they're also watching. They're watching who drives viewership, who moves the needle, who brings in revenue consistently. And the hard truth, right now, there's one player doing all three. Cowherd said it plainly. She's the one. She moves merch. She moves tickets. She moves ratings. Everybody else is just catching the wave. Even Clark's $11 million in endorsements is proof of value, but also proof of independence. She doesn't need a salary bump like others do. But if the league wants to pay everyone more, they better protect and support the player driving the money train. Because this isn't just about fair pay anymore. It's about how the WNBA survives the next decade, by embracing the shift or getting stuck in the past. And the choice facing every veteran right now is simple. Ride the wave or get washed out. The WNBA is at a crossroads. And Colin Cowherd wasn't just calling out Kelsey Plum. He was holding up a mirror to the entire league. For 25 years, players fought for visibility, respect, and real money. Now they've got the attention. They've got the buzz. They've got fans lining up outside arenas and networks bidding for broadcast rights. And what changed? Caitlin Clark. She's not just another player. She's the spark. The ratings juggernaut. The walking headline. The economic engine behind the biggest growth the WNBA has ever seen. And yet, some of her peers treat her like an outsider, like a problem, like the success she brings somehow threatens their legacy instead of lifting it. That's what Cowherd exposed. That quiet resentment, that petty shade, the snubs, the fouls, the backhanded comments in pressers. All of it adds up to one thing: biting the hand that feeds you. Look around. The players getting the biggest boost from Clark's rise aren't the ones throwing elbows. They're the ones embracing the moment. Players like Aya Wilson, Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell. They're thriving with Clark, not fighting against her. That's the blueprint. Because this league has a shot, finally, to break through to the mainstream. To be more than a niche. To become a real force in pro sports. But only if the players can get out of their own way. Cowherd wasn't wrong. This is the worst Caitlin Clark will ever be. She's a rookie, still learning, still adjusting. And she's already breaking records, selling out venues, and outdrawing NBA stars in jersey sales. Imagine what happens in 2 years. 5, 10. When the wave hits, Cowherd said, ride it. Don't fight it. Because history is clear. The veterans who resist the next great star always get left behind. The smart ones. They adapt and become part of something bigger. Caitlin Clark is that something bigger.